With me today, Kurt Davis, and we're going to be talking about his book. Here we go. Navigate to the Lighthouse, a Silicon Valley guide to executing global deals. And we're gonna be talking about it. And now, Kurt, before I get you to introduce yourself. So I really enjoyed the book.
Thank you.
I've read a lot of sales books, a lot.
Okay.
And a lot of them are very, very much the same. Yours is actually quite different.
That was my goal.
Good.
glad it worked.
because what you do is you talk about business and a startup and how you basically need to align a startup to enable you to do certain deals. So it's not just about selling, it's about making sure, and we'll talk about this in a moment, and it's about aligning the business in a particular way to do those deals. And that's what I found really intriguing.
Well, perfect. That was the purpose, and I'm glad you identified that. And
okay, good.
And I hope,
and that's what I really enjoyed, Kurt, about it was that you're and I built this spreadsheet, and I did this spreadsheet because of this, and because of this, and this, and this, and this is what we got from it, and that was wow, it's that So anyway, Kurt, introduce yourself. Tell people where they can get hold of you.
Great. So my name's Kurt Davis. You can get a hold of me at www.kurtdavis.com because I'm still alive. And it's my website, and you can email me at kd@kdalive.com. See me at LinkedIn at Kurt Davis. And so have some books up there, have a lot of blogging about traveling, well-being, and business development and business and startups, and my new startup as well.
Good, excellent. That's it. Sounds exciting. So let's talk about the book. So first off, what do you see as a lighthouse deal? Because I think we need to set the context, don't we, about what that means?
Yeah, a lighthouse deal is a symbol. It's a deal that kind of shines a light on a larger market opportunity where there might be more similar deals. But what it really is, it's telling you this is the deal, a deal I need to get to cross the chasm. Like I'm stuck in a certain market. I can't seem to leap over the proverbial crossing the chasm book. I can't seem to leap that chasm. What do I do? And there's a deal out there or two or three that you think you can get, and you're not sure if you should go for it or not. And that is the lighthouse deal. And any one of those two or three could be the lighthouse deal, but you got to get one of them.
And the Jeffrey Moore book, Crossing the Chasm, is if people haven't come across it, is an excellent book to read. I certainly really recommend it. Sure. And one of the things that you do in is that you don't just go, right, there's a lighthouse deal, I'm going to get on my horse and I'm going to ride over there and I'm going to kick some doors down and stuff. You actually said, right, let's take a step back, and you created a territory plan. So you actually thought about what you were going to do. So talk us through. So before we're going to go and get a lighthouse deal, what do we need to do to actually plan to do that?
Well, think. My mom used to tell me when I was a kid, think before you act. And because I used to act first, so that really resonated. So I don't know, I didn't always do it even as I was older, but made me really think sometimes. So think about like, okay, well, maybe if there's this deal, and maybe if we're in contact with them, there's more deals like that. And so, but is that really a deal we should spend time on? Like, is there a logical reason for that company to be working with us, or are we just going to go, chase up a tree for the next 2 years and get nothing? So I think what you want to do is spend a little time analyzing and make a spreadsheet of the craziest deal you could find to the most logical deal, and say, okay, and then see if you can categorize that and say, well, here are some reasons they might do this deal. Here's some reasons they may need this technology. Here's some reasons they might need a geography that we have that they don't. And here's some competitive reasons they might want to do this. And you can quantify those, and you make that little Excel sheet. And then you might start to say, wow, that deal that seems really far out there, that massive deal with Apple, actually makes a whole lot of sense, like based on this kind of thoughtful framework you put together. And And then you can start to say, okay, well, based on this, I've convinced myself, which I always say to people, convince yourself that it makes sense before you go do it. Because if you're not convinced that this deal is going to work, it's going to show in your discussions, right? You're going to be like, well, maybe we could work together. But, you're going to be like, no, this really makes sense. Like, I'm telling you, I've done my homework. You need to use this. Like, I'm here because it's my time too. And so, like, and so you do that analysis and it convinces yourself that these deals make sense. And then it convinces yourself that, like, hey, let's go put in that effort to
And
convince
these are
them.
deals, like you said, Apple, Sony. I'm trying to remember some of the other deals that you did.
Microsoft,
Yeah,
Spotify,
yeah.
Facebook, Clash of Clans, like, lots of these digital media companies we worked with. And some of them were obviously logical, but some of them we didn't have any idea if they would talk to us. So yeah, convince yourself and do the work, um, and then lay that foundation and put that story together that you want to tell them. And that takes time too. That's also in that planning phase.
So I was going to ask you about. So how do you navigate to the Lighthouse? Because it's about, you talk about coming up with a story, because you tell a story about you were at a conference and you just happened to be at I think you were at the bar or something, and you said to the person, "So what do you do?" He said, "I'm the CEO of Sony or whatever." It was one of your Lighthouse things, and it was like, and you had 10 seconds.
Yeah, 10
None,
seconds.
none,
Like,
none of this, none of this elevator pitch stuff. You needed to be able to say, "Well, I want to come and see you because of this," and he said, "No, I'm not interested." And yeah, but you need to see me because of this. And it was 10 seconds, and he took his beers and he was gone.
yeah, yeah. So
But you
I
got the
think
meeting.
I think what you have to do is you have to be prepared, especially when it's a little different world now post pandemic. But when you're sitting there in a group in a networking situation, and it's not always the case, even if it's like an introduction, you have very short amount of time to get somebody's attention. And especially if they're being hounded by other people. And so if you happen to, in this case, by chance, sit next to the CEO of King, it was King.com, which later
Right.
got sold to Blizzard or Activision, I think. And and it was like, well, I don't need you. And I'm like, well, I think you might need me because what you're doing doesn't actually work. And here's why. Like, here's
Yeah.
what we're doing that's better. And he's like, that's interesting. Give me your card. I'll make sure we follow up with you. And
Yeah.
but I had that already kind of scripted in my mind before I talked to him. And I knew what really the clear differentiators were with our competitors. And so that was able to get us a good solid meeting, and we did later get that deal, and our European team actually I think ended up bringing that one home. So yeah, so I think storytelling is a big thing, and when you storytell, there's a few things to think about, but if you look very high level, you always want to make sure you establish credibility with the people you're working with. I always call it the 3 C's. It's like credibility, uh, capability, and competency, right? So, or you can flip it like, hey, I'm a credible person. Okay, I got you. Like, here's why. Like, we have these good investors, blah, blah, blah. We are competent. Like, we know our differentiators. We know what's different. We know why we're good. We can execute. We've done it. We've done it with these great companies. We've already done it. If you can put that in a sentence in 15 seconds, then you can grab somebody, and that's your call it cocktail pitch. But that same pitch is the basis or the skeleton to going deeper into your sales pitches, into your presentations, and it really just layer in what you want to do. And as as your RFPs get bigger and bigger, you just use that same template and go deeper. Well, really, what is the competitive advantage? Well, let's look at the technology. Let's dig deeper. Let's look at scalability. Let's look at security. Let's look at all these other things. And so you can start at that high level framework and go deeper. And we talk about that in chapter, I think, 4, storytelling.
Yeah, and it's there's an awful lot of it's become one of those words which has become overused, but it's in its essence, it's so important, isn't it, to have that story?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And it's important that you not only tell the story right, but the people in your company tell the story the right way too.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we have a lot of people and talking to a lot of people. Sometimes it's by chance. It was like engineers' friends or this product manager was out like doing something and they were talking to a friend who worked at that company and we just were happened to work on a deal. And so especially in that, small knit San Francisco area where everybody was talking to everybody, we actually had to verse everybody up on how, what to say.
Because that's what I was going to ask you, which was that one of the things that comes across in the book is that team selling was a key component. This
Yeah.
wasn't this isn't Kirk Davis the lone wolf. This is Kurt that's actually that's given thought to the sales process, but is also realizing that there's something bigger than this, which is, you said earlier on, the European team did this.
Right.
So what is it that you got? What was it that you were able to install into the team to get them to understand what the goal and the prize was, which was ultimately to do these Lighthouse deals?
I think um I think
I
it's
didn't prep
when
you on this
you
question, by the way. I forgot, but I think it's so important.
yeah, I think what happens is you uh eh, when you're in an environment, obviously at work, and you're looking at, well, revenue's growing, are we closing deals, and everybody's part of that. They see if it's happening or not, and so like what we really did was say, look, here's we would put everybody. We do a team presentation or put everybody in a room and say, look, this is the strategy. This is what we're going for. This is what the sales guys are pitching. Now we have to deliver that on the. This is really enterprise sales at its finest. Um, and we have to deliver products that allow the sales team, which I would always call the messenger team, to actually deliver. And so, but I was like, we also have to have the ability, because we had a small sales team. Like we only had a handful, two or three, one person, it's like two people in Europe, one person in Japan, and so, and they were interfacing, but really what we end up having is product engineers and a bunch of people going with the sales team. So while the sales team or the salesperson was working on 15 or 20 deals, he couldn't go deep into any deal very, very deep, because then he would drop the other deals. So he actually needed a lot of support. So in some cases, that's technical sales manager role in a lot of enterprise sales company. But we did it differently. We would bring a whole team in there. We would bring 10 people into the RFP meeting, and then the company that we were pitching to would then have 10 or 15 people analyzing. So we taught, I mean, so then we'd have the product team would give the product pitch. The engineering team would get the engineering pitch. The finance team would talk about all the finances. So we would have a full team discussion. And, so that other team knew exactly who they were dealing with. So
Yeah.
the finance department knew who they were dealing with on the finance team. If we had a product issue, the product team could jump in and they would be back channeling with the product team. And the sales guy wasn't always point. Like stuff was happening, communications were going on behind the scenes, but the team all was versed up on what needed to be done and what needed to be said. And so like if I said something to the salesperson and the finance guy happened to be emailing the other finance guy, and we said something different, they would come back and say, hey, what he said and what you said are different. Can you guys reconcile that? So it was really important to say, no, we're on the same page here. Like that's how you're going to get paid. And so,
and you talk in the book about the deal plans you put together. So you actually you were talking about, you show a plan, where a spreadsheet where you've got the name of the individual within your organization, what they do, and in effect, I think it was the message that they're to give into that account. So as you said, in the RFP process, it wasn't just Kurt working till 3 o'clock in the morning, filling it in and sending it in and hoping. It was actually, there was a whole team there.
yeah, right. I mean, it takes teamwork to make the dream work, right? And so, like, it's also you can't know everything either as a salesperson. Now, over time, what would happen is we had such a large repository of information that I would, the sales or the sales team would be able to fill in most of that work. So as we started to really build up that repository after RFP1, RFP2, et cetera, et cetera. But initially it was everyone having to contribute, and what it did is it made us better. Those RFPs really got us to think, how can we perform our best? Like this is what we've done is not our best. It's not what we need to be at that caliber. And so we learned a lot through that process, and each individual team member started to learn a lot. And so it upped the game from everybody on the team. And that was really important.
So one of the things that you did, you worked in different markets, and you actually talk about the details. So just give an overview about some of the markets you worked in, and the differences that you've seen, because you worked in Japan, didn't you, or something?
Sure. Oh, so I worked in a lot of different markets. I
Yeah.
only wrote really about Asia, Japan, Korea,
Yeah.
India. I wrote a little bit about Europe because I did spend a year in London. So I wrote a little bit about a tad bit about Germany. I spent a lot of time there, and a little bit about Scandinavia region, France a little bit. And then I did do quite a bit of work in the Middle East, which I didn't write about. Partially because I probably didn't know like really what to say at the time. I was like, man, I'm not sure, nothing good or bad. But I think just understanding. I think the trick when you go into all these different markets and really where the failures occur really comes to arrogance and chest beating, or I used to see a lot of young Silicon Valley types coming, well-funded young kids who would come to Japan, and they would really rub people the wrong way. Um, and I had done two stints in Japan. After college, I went to Japan, and then I came back, and even in London, I think there's definitely a perception of a little bit too maverick is not always accepted. But at the same time, like I think showing that you're persistent and you're going to stick things out in a market is important to your partners. There's a lot of come and go, especially in Asia when companies don't succeed. Now the world is different because you are there's so many companies being seeded and funded that compete with U.S. companies, right? So in the blink of an eye, some company in the US gets knocked off in Europe, right? Because Index Ventures is like scouting all the companies, and they just find the German company that knocks off DoorDash, right? And they invest in them, right? And so and that happens in Indonesia and everywhere. So now it's a different game. But with our company, which was an API sales play, we were dealing with telcos, we were dealing with these large, massive companies on behalf of like Sony and Apple and Microsoft. And so we actually had a reason to be in all these markets and talking to them. So I talk a little bit about the international differences, but I also talk about how to build international teams, which I think is really, really interesting. Like, how do you actually do it cost effectively? How do you do it so the teams communicate well, get along, especially when you have people who are the spread of people being paid in one location is very different than the other. They're all things to think about, right? And how do you do those efficiently?
So you also talk about swarming and the organization. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this is something that my ex-colleague Ron Herson, who I talk about in the book, who later went to be chief product officer of DocuSign, used to say is like we have to swarm the org. That means kind of tier up. So investors are talking to people, CEOs talking to people, he's talking to people, even the junior people are out there trying to kick tires and talk to younger people. And so the idea is, hey, we've met all these people from this company. They're really adamant about working with us. Let's engage them. And they're convinced, right? So it's really hard for one person to knock on the same door every day. Like, think about it. It's like somebody that keeps knocking on your door. Like, well, today, if I knock on your door and I try to sell you something, but tomorrow somebody else knocks on your door, you'll probably open the door and be like, oh, who's this person now? Like, but if I knocked on the door 3 times, you're gonna be like, dude, I told you, like, come back later. Like, so yeah. So like, so change up who's knocking on the door, and it helps.
Yeah. Kurt, thank you so much for coming in and talking today about your book, Navigate to the Lighthouse, a Silicon Valley Guide to Executing Global Deals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Remind people where they can get hold of you and get hold of a copy of the book. Well, I got it off
Sure.
Amazon, but
Sure. You can email me at kd@kdalive.com, and my website's www.kdalive.com, and LinkedIn at Kurt Davis. And always happy to say hi to people. If you have audience members in the UK, I actually have about a dozen free Audible books for UK. So if you email me, I'll send you a free Audible book. Audible sent me some, including if you'd like one. So yeah, so got a few of those. So email me and I'll send you one.
okay. Sounds like a great deal. Thank you so much, Kurt, for spending some time talking to me and talking about your book. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.